This time on the Magic Kitchen podcast, we're talking about magic in the workplace. I'm Leandra Witchwood.
And I'm Elyse Wells.
And welcome to the Magic Kitchen podcast, where we talk about magic, kitchen witchcraft, herbs,
and everything in between.
So we're in the smack middle of Mercury retrograde as we record this. And I know there's a lot going on and we have some catch up to do before we get to our episode. So tell me about what you've been up to, Elyse. I know you have tons going on, so I love hearing about your adventures.
Yeah. Well, as this releases, I am in the UK for a couple of weeks for the Jane Austen Festival. I'm in Bath.
Fun.
And it is my second year at the festival. So it's really nice to have some friendships formed and to be able to catch up with folks. And, you know, Mercury retrograde is happening and everybody gets kind of panicked about retrogrades. But what I've learned, and I'm traveling during Mercury retrograde, which Mercury affects travel, communication, and technology. So when we're talking about a retrograde, what we're really saying, what that means is that the planet that rules those qualities is asking you to take a deeper look at those issues. And that, unfortunately, usually means that those things will be heightened, which in the case of like communication issues or travel issues, or that's usually, you know, a bad thing. But like Venus retrograde, for example, we had a Venus retrograde throughout most of this summer. And that actually is a chance for relationships to be brought closer because it asks you to look at love in your life and consider where you're putting your time and energy when it comes to your emotions. And if those people are deserving of that. So people make big commitments in the summer. And that's during Venus retrograde. That's actually a good thing. So for me, I found that actually traveling during a Mercury retrograde is an opportunity for growth in directions that I might not have been able to have outside of that retrograde. So maybe I'll make bolder decisions with communications. You know, maybe I'll reach out for something bigger, but it makes me stop and think about it. So it gives me more a pause before sending that email or replying to that offer that I got.
Right.
So that's really what it asks you to do. Like think a little bit more than you might normally before involving yourself in communications that could be path altering. Which travel is definitely that. It's like definitely fast path to personal growth. So,
right. Oh man. Yeah. Well, Mercury retrograde is never kind to me in the electronics atmosphere, and that's like last retrograde. I had a weird thing with my car. Like my car is almost brand new, and I get in my car last retrograde and it won't start. And it was something to do with the battery, like that. It was, you know, like dead center of retrograde. It just decided to poop out.
Lovely.
And of course, you know, newer cars, they're all electronic. So all the electronic things go wrong. Right.
Yeah.
And it was some sort of sensor. And it was an expensive retrograde. This one it's not necessarily, I mean, I'm knock on wood. I am knocking on my head and knocking on my wooden table here because so far it hasn't been electronics messing with me, but it's messing with, you know, members of my family, my husband in particular. Like he had just a really amazing ride yesterday where, you know, his company was at risk because their like firewall people just dropped him as a client. It was just insane. And I, you know, sat there with him. He was working for 4 hours to ensure that his customers, his clients had security. So it was just that reminder that, you know, what can go wrong will go wrong. And if you're not paying close attention to it, like don't tempt the fates, I guess. retrograde.
Yeah. Well, and it also is a reminder that even if you're not aware of retrogrades, like your husband does not study and follow astrology.
Nope, he does not.
But he was affected by it. So that's where our leg up as witches comes from, when we do follow these things and keep an eye on it and check our witches' day books and planners and decide, okay, not going to apply for that job. I actually just sent off the day of the full moon, was, still coinciding with the Mercury retrograde, but I said, you know what? No, I'm going to use the positive energy of this full moon, which is, and it's also was a blue moon. So that's really
a very powerful moon,
any negativity communication wise. So I had some big communications to do. I sent them off that day, like I used the positive overriding energy.
Yeah.
To do that.
Yeah, definitely.
So what's going on in the Rebel Mystic community for you?
Oh my gosh. So we're coming up. This is September. So we are doing kitchen witch magic. So we're doing kitchen witchery. So the mentoring session, I'm going to start talking about occult herbalism and magical herbalism as it applies to the kitchen. And then in our ritual this month, I'm so excited for it because we're going to magically infuse a seasoning blend. And this seasoning blend, we're going to blend together. We're going to infuse it. And then we're going to, have that in our kitchens available to, sprinkle onto chicken or vegetables or fish, whatever, and use it when we need that boost of magical energy. So, you need some luck. We're going to, infuse it with luck. We're going to infuse it with positive vibes for the family. So if family comes home, they're a little cranky, make some magic chicken.
Yeah.
But then next month, I'm really excited about next month. Not only because it's October, but because I launched the Rebel Mystic method. And this one I'm so, so, so excited about because I've been working on this project within my personal life for almost 20 years. And without realizing that's what I was working on until it all came together. And I have this huge guidebook. It's over 90 pages of information, helpful tips, exercises, worksheets, everything to really manifest that enchanted, magical, best life that you want for yourself. And this is the method that I use to manifest the things I need in my life. So my house, my car, my businesses, everything, friendships, everything. And I'm so excited about this because I use it every single day. So I know if it works for me, I know it's going to work for other people. And it's so practical. One of the worksheets in there is working with a deity or with a spirit or an ancestor and collecting their information and connecting with them on the deepest level. So this super blue moon, I used that worksheet to research, connect, and deeply dive into my relationship with Arianrod. And it's such a magical experience when you can learn to understand yourself and the spirits and energies you work with on a more intimate level, and then connect that with ritual. So that's really what this is all about, is creating the rituals of life that help you manifest and live the enchanted life that I think we're all chasing, but we have a hard time manifesting. So this is where I'm like, yay, let's do this.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
And when I launch this, what it'll be is I'm going to launch it as a live walkthrough of the guidebook. So you'll get me personally for an hour or two, or probably more than that, because it's a big book. And we'll leave room for questions and interaction and that sort of thing. But I'm going to walk everybody who signs up for this live event. They're going to get a copy of the book. And then I walk through the book with you page by page and deep dive into the concepts and the practices. And yeah, it's fully supportive, fully immersive. And I can't wait.
Nice. Oh, that's really good. Yeah, my September.
What are you up to?
In our Patreon.
Yeah, I know you've got a lot going.
Yeah, the Magical Living community I run on Patreon is focusing on the themes of the coming of autumn. So September is this liminal time because we still might get some warm days. It's warm enough to spend time outdoors, but it's not so hot that the mosquitoes are biting you and you're sweating through your skin and you need sunscreen upon sunscreen. It's that beautiful time to really take in the outdoors. So, and also give thanks for what we have. So we'll be creating a harvest spell jar, which will be a transformation ritual working with the full moon in Aries that September blesses us with. And we're also doing for Mabon a ritual of thanks that includes some celebration ideas that you can do that are covert witchy activities.
Ooh,
to
I like
host
that.
a dinner with your folks. And actually, fun fact, and you'll read about this in the ritual. I have a blurb on it, but the festival that Americans celebrate that is called Thanksgiving was originally celebrated in September because that is the harvest time for,
That makes sense.
where the Pilgrims were living in North America at the time. So they moved it because it made it easier to sell cards and to have capitalist events. Like, truly, that's why they moved it, because it had Halloween, then Thanksgiving, then Christmas. They found that performed better for businesses. So
makes sense.
It
does.
So September, I always get that song, like every 1st of September, I get that song by the White Stripes in my head. Fall is here, hear the yell, back to school, ring the bell. Like every time is like my anthem for the first few weeks of September.
Great.
And I'm also in my community sharing an exclusive tour of my cat colony, the land spirits of Artemis, Greece, where I live. So I'm really excited about that.
Nice.
When I started doing exclusive videos, I was originally doing exclusive articles, and I did a poll with the community and said, like, where do we see this going? Do we prefer videos over articles? And actually everybody said videos. And then I opened that up as an exclusive poll for community members. So if you're a member, it's an ongoing thread. You just add ideas. Like if you're doing something and you're struggling with it, you can be like, Elyse, can you show me how to do this? So October is also, actually, that one's much more magical than meeting my land spirits personally. It is a full morning routine with me. Like, so that's
awesome.
Yeah. So it's stuff that I don't feel comfortable sharing on social media because it's to such a wide audience. Like, in the we were talking about this a little bit this week, Leandra and I, how like, I don't share the nitty gritty of my magical practice on social media. I share a lot about my beliefs or where I get my thoughts from, but I don't, share the dedications I read at the beginning of my rituals. I don't show actual video. Spoiler alert. Like most of the time you see me in videos doing ritual things, that is what I look like doing a ritual, but it's not actually a ritual because I wouldn't bring technology into a ritual space like that. Right. And I think that comes from my Mediterranean background of like, it invites the evil eye to share the intimacy of your practice too intimately.
Too closely. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I do feel comfortable sharing that in our community space on Patreon. The members I've got in my Magic Living community are so uplifting and positive with each other. It's such a great space.
Awesome.
So yeah, if you're looking to really dive into a seasonal living where you're focusing on the flow of the wheel of the year and, you want some guidance on how to celebrate that and you want a community of uplifting people to share your experiences with. So September has become a themed month of tarot in a way as well, because my workshop for September is going to be an introduction to becoming an intuitive tarot reader. So if you're interested in learning your cards more deeply, if you're tired of always having to get that book out when you try and figure out what you think you're reading for yourself, this is the workshop for you. So join me on the 30th. And hopefully, if you're really ready to dive into your relationship with your cards, you will love this workshop. And it's also been great because I've had so many tarot readings being booked for September. So if you're interested, I also added a new reading spread that I'm doing for overcoming grief. So that could be really good for you. It came up out of necessity because so many people, unfortunately, are dealing with loss. And I think also entering the autumn and the liminal time of the thinning veil, it gets us thinking about our ancestors more than usual. So check out my grief spread as well if you're looking for a tarot reading to help overcome some vibes, some negative vibes this season.
Yeah, well, it gets deep, and this for me, and for the community I work with, including my coven. This is where it started, actually, within the coven. This is our season for shadow work. Like this is where we go the deep dive in shadow work. Like we're always doing shadow work, but this is the deep dive in shadow work. So you reminded me that I am going to start opening the dark mirror coaching up for individuals who want to work one-on-one with me in their shadow work, in that shadow realm, to work through this time of year, not only spiritually, but also emotionally and mentally, to get yourself prepared for that dark time of the year. Because that can really lead us to deep reflection, if we don't know where to put that and how to, function inside of that, then I don't know, it becomes counterintuitive to us rather than helpful, because we have to give ourselves that space to relax into it, to digest it. So I'll put the link in the show notes to if you want to show your interest to the Dark Mirror coaching, and you can sign up for that, the email list, because I haven't fully opened it up yet. But it's basically, you work with me every week, once a week, and we do activities and exercises linked to shadow work that leads you to that understanding of self and uncovering those superpowers, digging that gold that's in your psyche, in your shadow, that you have those superpowers. You've just been denying them. Yeah. And even the Rebel Mystic method that I mentioned earlier, it takes a dive into the shadow work. So they're both connected intimately. And it's such an opportunity to know yourself better and to live that life of balance and, not placing your energy in the wrong places. I think that's where it really boils down to. We tend to place our energy into these places, into these people, into these emotional traps that throw us off. So Elyse and I were talking about this episode and discussing the issues and potential dangers of bringing your craft, bringing your magic into your workplace and what that could mean. I know in my history, in my experience, I was an executive assistant. So I worked for, high-end executives who had very particular ideas about the world. Very particular ideas about women, very particular ideas of how people should behave. And it's interesting because they had no problem bringing their religion into the workplace.
They never do
prayer. They? Oh, no, they had no problem with it. Like, they saw nothing wrong with imposing their beliefs onto others. I remember one instance, I was sitting at my desk and I had a picture of a labyrinth. It was actually the Chartres labyrinth in France, which is in a cathedral, a Christian cathedral. And the one executive came up to me and said, "Ooh, what's that woo-woo stuff on your desk? You really shouldn't have that." But yet on his desk, he had a big wooden cross. Mm-hmm. So there was this big double standard. And I'm sure many of you who are out in the workforce that practice witchcraft experience that too. And you might be a little tight-lipped about what you practice and what you believe, for good reason, because there is a lot of discrimination that happens when we get too vocal or people know a little too much about who we are and what we do. When you're in a professional field, you can't risk being targeted by other people.
Yeah.
And especially when it comes to executives and that sort of thing. So that horrendous issue of being ostracized, being judged, being discriminated against is very, very real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this comes up a lot when people ask about the broom closet. They're like, well, I'm not really out of the broom closet because I'm not out at work. Well, right. I don't think that's on us, really. That's society's, unwillingness to fight for our rights in that way. Like, it feels icky to say sometimes because there's people suffering so much more, but witchcraft is a marginalized community. We don't have the same freedoms that other religions do. And even as we fight for the religions of, Muslim people in the US and Europe, or we fight for Judaism in predominantly Christian regions. This is more of a European fight, I think, than an American one. But still, it would sound like we would be made to feel crazy or stupid for adding ourselves to that list. And we are the fastest growing religion in the UK and one of the fastest growing religions in the US. So there's really no reason for that discomfort, but it is there. And that wreaks havoc on our psyches as witches. Yeah. So we're hoping this episode is going to give you some insights into how you can covertly bring strategies of witchcraft into your mundane life, and hopefully how you can also feel more confident in your craft, even when you feel like you can't freely express it.
Yeah. And when you were talking, it brought to mind something I saw yesterday. I was watching a ritual. It was a live TikTok ritual of a group of people. They were all strangers coming together it was for the full moon on Lunasad. And they all came together. They did a live for people that couldn't be there. It was the Lunar Fair. So I don't know if you've ever heard of that. I just recently learned about it and I want to go so badly. So if anybody from the Lunar Fair is listening, please help me get there. But so it was a group of people coming together to do ritual together. And in my experience and my knowledge, I'm looking at this, I'm like, oh, yay, I want to participate. So I'm sitting in the live and I'm participating with them, even though I can't be there physically. And I'm watching the comments, and people came to that live who had no business being there with so much hate. Now, how would they feel if we came into their church's Zoom or their church's live or their church and started just vomiting all this hate in the middle of their service, in the middle of their service? That would not be tolerated. But somehow we're expected to just accept it and be shameful that we tried to express ourselves for what we believe, and, try to connect with one another through ritual in a sacred space and share that sacred space with others who of like mind.
No,
it was atrocious,
really disappointing to hear, but also sadly not surprising.
It angered me. Like, I was so
That's
pissed.
the world we live in. And as witches, we often have the chance then to rise above it.
The Magic Kitchen podcast is funded and supported by thewitchwoodteahouse.com, offering a variety of hand-blended loose leaf teas as well as loose herbs for all of your ritual, spell work, wellness, and everyday enjoyment needs. If you would like to support this podcast while sipping a great cup of tea, head over to thewitchwoodteahouse.com and find the magic that's in store for you.
So in my former life, I was a classroom teacher in Baltimore. And in that role, it was really important to me, not only because schools are meant to be secular, and I do believe in that. I think public schools should be. I don't think any religion should be taught, I'm not going to start any type of prayer up there. But also within that, I also was conscious of, okay, well, what I wear, if I shouldn't wear my pentacle to school, for example, or because you also don't want to be at the receiving end of really angry parents when you answered a question honestly that a student might have had. That's where I would have been with it. It would never have been an intentional indoctrination. Like witches famously do not evangelize. We do not proselytize. Nope. We actually make it very hard for you to join our covens. We were like, stick it out for a year and a day, and then maybe we'll talk. Like, that's how we are. And it's not exclusionary. It's just, we only want people who want to be here. There's no tricking you. We don't baptize you at birth. Like, none of that's going to happen here. It's just not going to happen. And so I always have that mindset, of course. But as a teacher, I had this added fear, mostly of parents. It really less the administration, because they're so busy. They don't really, even when you desperately need them, they won't show up. But the parents are very controlling in the school environment this time of, I don't know, I don't know. I don't want to say generation, because it's just the past 2 years. Like, my first few years of teaching were fine. There was just something that happened during COVID that I don't know. So I was very concerned about that. And also at the same time, I knew how valuable having witchcraft practices at work was. So I needed to straddle that line. We're going to share some of our best strategies we found for using magic in the workplace covertly.
Absolutely.
But something interesting I noticed in my experiences as a teacher, I had 2 instances where a child had pagan parents who were, in both instances, they weren't dictating anything at all to those students, but they were allowing them to explore multiple religious avenues, which I do notice that. We talked about that in our episode on pagan parenting with Corey Ravensey, where pagan parents are less likely to indoctrinate even within their own religion. They just kind of provide opportunities for that child to explore spirituality in any way they can. And that was the case.
Absolutely.
And both times, and rarely did a parent ever come to a parent-teacher night, but both of these witchy parents did. Both times, they recognized right away that I was a witch. And I am consciously dressing not to look witchy. I am consciously
I think we know each other, though. I think we really do.
Exactly, we do. So that's what I would recommend. Like when we're faced with these dangerous fears of what it's like to be in the workplace, think about the facts that there are more spiritually inclined folks alive and well today than at any other point in human history. So there is an ally for you out there, whether that's another witch or maybe a Buddhist or an atheist. Like really when it comes to allies at work, they don't need to believe exactly what we believe. That doesn't come into it with friendships for us usually as witches either. But you'll find allies in unsuspecting places. So actually practicing your witchcraft, I say that in quotation marks because like we said, we're going to give suggestions where unless they know, they won't know.
Yes. You got to be in the know.
I just got Hamilton in my head. Where he's like, you don't know what we know.
Yeah. It's excellent. Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, definitely. Like, that. I think that's our main fear is being pushed back against so hard with so much hate that it threatens our job. It threatens our livelihood. I've not personally experienced this, but I know people who have experienced where they, were a little more open at work and they all of a sudden mysteriously lost their job. And then they would have people come to their home and throw eggs at their house. And, there was graffiti. It was just really horrible. So when we say that witches are a marginalized group, we mean that. We are absolutely. I mean, maybe we're not fearing for our lives literally, but our livelihoods definitely, and our safety definitely.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think the more we push back against, and this is where it's such a sucky situation. I think the more we push back against cultural norms that are unhealthy for certain marginalized communities, the harder the opposition hits back. Does that make sense? Like we have to be careful of that. We have to be careful about how we come out and how we speak and how we present ourselves, because the opposition, once they view us as open and a threat to them for whatever reason, even though we're not a threat, you still get that repercussion. They could start getting violent. They could start, I've heard stories of parents having child social services and protective services called on them simply because their neighbor figured out that they were pagan and didn't like that. So they thought that child social services should get involved. Like there's definite dangers there. It is. It's terrifying. And in the workplace, it's no different. I had a one coven mate it was not proven, but it was pretty obvious. She had a male coworker who found out somehow. I think he found her on MySpace, going way back. This is way back. Like he found her on MySpace, and her MySpace was very pagan, but she had it under another name. Like she didn't use her name because she was trying to be discreet.
Yeah.
But somehow he found out it was her. Somehow he connected to her and confronted her at work and was threatening her at work, and nobody was doing anything until finally he did something. He did enough of something to get fired. And that afternoon, after he was let go, her car was keyed, and it had just horror written on it and just ridiculous shit. Like the entire circumference of her car was destroyed. So yeah, people get really belligerent when they think that they are in the right to do so.
You may have noticed that here at the Magic Kitchen Podcast, we don't have sponsored ads. That's because this is a fully listener-supported show. We do what we do for you, dear listener, and when you join my magical living community on Patreon, you're supporting all the time and energy that goes into setting up podcast interviews, writing articles and rituals, my paranormal mystery novel, and all that I do. And in exchange, you're getting over 10 exclusive journal prompts, rituals, witch tip videos, meditations, and more each month. If you love this podcast, consider joining my magical space. I can't wait to meet you and be an even bigger part of your magical journey. Go to patreon.com/Elyse Wells or follow the link in the show notes.
So now that we've talked a little bit about the dangers of being open in the craft, let's talk about why you would want to have your craft present with you at work. And there's many, many reasons. You know, your personal energy and your personal boundaries are numero uno in that stratosphere, because you need to be able to shield. You need to be able to do these self-care routines that maintain your energy throughout your work life. I remember always being drained in my office because there's demands being, not only just work demands, but there's emotional and cultural demands being made on you when your religion doesn't fit into that cultural norm. So checking in with yourself and shielding yourself, that's a practice. Like, nobody knows you're doing it. Nobody has to know you're doing it. You can go to the bathroom and do it if you want to, but making sure you have a good shield, warding yourself with symbols on your skin or on the bottom of your shoes or something, a place where nobody's going to see it. And taking time for that self-care, going outside and walking at lunch is a great option. Like, go connect with nature, go sit next to a tree, connect with the tree. So if you want to connect with a tree, the best way to do that is just stand next to a tree or sit next to a tree, be near the tree and breathe. The way we exchange information with trees is through breathing. They create oxygen, we create carbon dioxide, and we exchange that with each other. So it's information being exchanged. And if you're doing it mindfully, then you start developing a relationship with the energy of that tree. So you can pick a tree that you can go to on your break, on your lunch, that becomes your like emotional support tree.
And with trees, when we're talking about connecting with the elders of our home, we can connect with the elders of our workplace. When we think about, if you commute to a job, you are spending a lot of your time there. So those land spirits want you on their side. They want to know who you are. They will work with you if they know who you are. So introducing yourself to the land spirits at work is not a bad idea. And you can subtly leave offerings to them, especially if you're eating your lunch outside, for example. Pour a little bit of your tea out there for them, or your coffee, or give them a chip. You know, if there's some nice crows coming by, leave them something shiny. There's lots of things you can do to connect with that land, especially once you open yourself up to that won't be noticeable to the unsuspecting muggles of the world.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, like, part of your lunch. Oops, I spilled part of my lunch. Really, that's an offering. They don't have to know that.
Yep. And really, people don't look the way we think they do at stuff. Like, if they don't know, they don't know.
Yeah. You don't have to draw attention to it. You don't have to explain yourself. I think that's a good point to make, is like, you don't have to explain yourself to anybody. You know, if they ask you why you did that, say, I don't know, and just leave it at that. Like, they don't have to know. They don't have to know anything. You don't owe them anything.
Yeah. Yep. No is a complete sentence. That's something I'm constantly using as a mantra when I'm out and about. It's a hard one for me to learn, but it's an important one.
And it's very clear.
I think the most important thing we can do is prepare ourselves for the workday with shielding and ending our day with shielding. So we'll talk a little bit about how each of those things can go. And actually, as a teacher, I had to shield my energy throughout the day. Like, those prep periods began and ended with a little candle lighting, if I could, or what are they called? A room spraying, if I needed, because there's just something about being around that many hormonal teenagers that their energy needed cleansed more than an adult workplace, any adult workplace I've ever worked in.
Oh my God. I have one. I don't know how you do with a room full of them.
Oh yeah. I had a class of 53.
Wow.
Yeah. And then my other classes were like 46, 47. Yeah. It was unconscionable. In our contract, it said no classes would be bigger than 28 students. And I had a full, almost double that on average.
53. Jesus.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
I know. Well, why did I move to Greece? Oh yeah.
Yeah, right? I wonder why.
But yeah, energy shielding. That's how I survived. And I started my day actually in the car. I would do some energy shielding. At home, I had a gratitude practice that I did. I never wanted to leave home ungrateful for home because that meant so much to me, that place of respite. So I would list at least 3 things I was grateful for, just like while I'm brushing my teeth. My morning routine at that time in my life, I'm not a morning person, was like 10 minutes tops. Yeah. So that's how I would start. And then leaving the house in my car before going into school, it was deep breaths, some deep breathing exercises, and building a bubble of golden light to protect my energy. That's how I would start my workday at that time.
Good. Yeah. And I think that's so essential. Like the shielding, the warding, all these practices, the breathing are really essential when we're dealing with other people. Because I don't know anybody who works in a place where they don't have at least one shitty coworker to deal with. One person that just disrupts everything or just makes the day that much worse, you know? And there's a lot of ways you can deal with them. And I have created a spell for our listeners that it's a tea spell for getting rid of a coworker. So we'll share that later, and I'll share a little more details later. But you can get that in the show notes, and it's a really quick download, and it's really discreet, and I think you'll like it.
So when you leave work, it's equally important to leave work. Leave it behind you. Don't bring that energy with you. Your car is also a sacred space. Talking to the Americans here. If you live in Europe or a place with public transport, then it's probably, I don't know. It's a tough call because you can't have that decompression period on your own between home and work. So maybe if you have the opportunity, taking a longer walking route to the subway or something that's going to get you some fresh air in between that, because that's a good chance to connect with nature. It's sad to say, but a lot of Americans, like we could spend the entire day never getting any sunlight because we go into work before the sun, we leave after the sun. We don't walk outside. We just go 5 feet to the car and then 5 feet from the car to the house. So that is definitely a bummer. So the car is a nice sacred space in a sense because it is for us. But it also eliminates our time outside quite a bit. So, but anyway, I always would shield after work. And I would do this visualization, which Damien Eccles, actually, I read this book much later after I was done teaching. We had him on the podcast, actually. He has a book called Ritual. And one of the exercises he describes is cleansing negative energy by envisioning golden light being inhaled and as you expand, it fills your body, fills every crevice of your body, goes all the way down through every chakra, and any muck that's inside of you, anything that you need to expel, the bad conversations, the annoying students who really pushed back on the grade you gave them, the administration not understanding why I made this decision, your boss calling you into the office, the awkward email that you replied all when you should have just replied to the sender. You envision that as like a inky mass leaving on each exhale. Yes. So every inhale is more golden light filling out those corners of yourself. Every exhale is that inky black, unsavory, true void grossness leaving you.
Yeah. Yeah, whenever I do it, it always feels sticky to me.
Yes, literally.
I don't know, like tar or sap. Yeah.
That's funny. We both said sap at the same time. I think of it like sap.
Sap. Definitely. And I think really a key thing is if you have a vehicle where you can get into your vehicle and you have a drive home, make that a conscious time to decompress and to leave work behind and to envision yourself coming home, like that literal feeling of coming home. I know too many people, we get in our cars and we're a ball of nerves. We're so tense. We're road rage and we're just so angry instead of letting it go, leaving it at work and setting those boundaries of, you know what? Yeah. Like I set that boundary. Like I have clocked out. My day has ended. I am done. Like it is not going to bother me until I step into that office tomorrow morning or
and
into
your
the
job
warehouse
does not deserve your energy outside of the hours you are paid for it. And in fact, maybe depending on the job, it doesn't deserve you then either. You should, maybe you need to look for another job, but
I should probably go somewhere else.
It's definitely an energy exchange that needs to feel fair.
Absolutely. Yeah. But allow yourself that time to let it go. Allow yourself to let it go. I know that was one of my biggest frustrations was that I didn't know how to let it go. Like I didn't realize that I could use the car and my time alone in the car before I got my kids or before I got home or got to the grocery store, wherever I was going after work. Like I could literally use that time to decompress. You know, maybe you need to scream in your car. You need to sit there and scream for a couple of minutes. Do it.
Oh yeah.
Like,
that could be really
just
cathartic.
Release that energy. Yes. Yeah. Do whatever you need to do. Like, I mean, don't smash your car into things because that's just not going to help. But whatever helpful, productive thing you can do to release yourself. And one of the visualizations I did when I was working in corporate America, very stuffy, very staunch, very controlling environments, is when I left, I felt like there was a ball and chain attached to me. So when I would get into my car, I would literally turn on like the most soothing music I could find. And I would sit there for like 2-3 minutes before I turned the key and go and went away. I would close my eyes and I would imagine myself sawing through that chain. And I had the biggest, badass, most effective, like some days it was a machine. Some days it was just like a handsaw that I would just saw through that chain and I would drop it. Like I would literally take my hand outside of my window and I would open it and release it like I was dropping something heavy. And it's all energetic. Nobody knew what I was doing. I could be throwing away hair, that was in, that I just took off my shoulder or something. Nobody can see what you're doing. Nobody knows what they're doing. And you don't owe them any explanation of what you're doing. But that visual exchange of I am taking this chain off and I am dropping it here in the parking lot and I'm leaving. And it's so that, that's helpful. That's helpful things to do. And then you feel, I felt a lot better going home. Join me, Leandra Witchwood, in the Rebel Mystic community as we come together and explore the radical, rebellious act of creating sisterhood and engaging in deep self-care.
So let's talk covert practices at work, right in their faces. All these muggles, what are you magically doing that they aren't seeing? So the number one thing that helped me was a necklace. And this wouldn't have to be a necklace if you hate wearing necklaces or you have a job that you can't. You could put a stone in your pocket that has the same protective powers. So for me, black tourmaline was game changing. And actually I had this incredibly tense, I used to teach theater. So the director role of after school theater was very difficult. I was completely alone. There was not a single other teacher. There was only one parent who wanted to help. So imagine like I'm making sets. I'm balancing the budget. I'm calling, order wood to make these sets by hand, might I add. I don't even know how to hold a drill, but okay, I'm doing that. Like it was really, and I'm directing. Like that was the job I thought I was doing. Like it was really, 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 really difficult. And during tech week.
So your director, stage manager, sound.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. At one point I counted it up. I was doing the roles of 11 people. And that wasn't including the roles I wish I had also had help for. Like in an ideal world, like I would also have like extra parents on hand to help with fittings or like stuff like that.
Right.
But no, if I just said costume designer's one person, I was also that. Like, and I had really amazing seniors who were really helpful and they were awesome, but still, like I was the only adult in the room 99% of the time, which was really, really hard. So better believe I used every energetic power under the sun and moon to help survive that. Yeah. And during Tech Week, my black tourmaline broke. Like it just broke into a bunch of pieces. Oh. And I know it was because it was just absorbing and using up every last bit of energy. So luckily I had an obsidian pendant at home. So I switched to that until I could get a new black tourmaline because I noticed the difference. If I skipped putting it on or I forgot it, I would feel so tired. I wouldn't, by 11 p.m. or a.m., I would just be dead. So there's so much an amulet can help you with. And I wasn't as versed in the practice at the time, but also imbuing an amulet. It can be anything. It can be a necklace your husband got you. It could be, one of those macaroni necklaces your kids made you. Anything you want can be an amulet. You just have to charge it with your energy. So yes. That's an option as well. It doesn't have to be a crystal if you don't have an ethical source for them.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be a pagan symbol that would draw attention to you, you know?
Yeah.
It could be an owl that represents, or a wolf or some other animal that represents your deity and that you call upon every day to help protect you and sustain your energy.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of mundane things that are very pagan that we can use. One of my favorite ways to protect and cleanse my energy is to use room sprays or clearing sprays. You can, make one out of essential oils. So typically my ratio, because this is also a cleaning spray, but it also could be a room refresher. It is 1 part alcohol, whatever cheap alcohol you can find, vodka, rum, whatever, just cheap. 1 part white distilled vinegar, 1 part water, and then whatever essential oils you want to put in there, however strong you'd like it. And I put that in a little spray bottle, shake it up, and spray it. So lemon is a really good one for clearing out energy. Rosemary, lemon and rosemary. You can use rose to help soften energy and bring in more loving energy into the space, but while also protecting the energy and protecting your space. So if you're in a cubicle or you drive a truck or you have workstation that's pretty much yours, or you're going to be in there for some time, just have this little bottle in your pocket and shake it up and spritz it.
And if you want to add a level to it, if you work with any Greek deities or the Greek pantheon or Greek traditions called to you, there is a recipe that I shared on my Patreon with all my community members for hieronyms, which is a cleansing wash that the ancient Greeks used before ritual and after anything that would have attracted miasma. Miasma was basically their understanding of germs. So they were pretty close. They were pretty on the money with it because they knew that you got germs from they called it human activities, but sex, being near a dead body, or cleaning up bodily fluids. You couldn't approach the gods without using hieronyms to cleanse yourself. And what hieronyms is, it's really actually easy to make. But I have a recipe with incantations that I shared,
nice.
They're really, really great. Like you can ritually make this and then it keeps for a good while. But you mix seawater and spring water. So in this case, if you don't have a sea nearby, like most people, then you would add salt water and fresh water. Tap water is fine in equal parts. And then you take sacred herbs, light them, and then douse them in the water. So the herbs could be relevant to this particular need. Rosemary is like the number one in my opinion, because it's going to clear all negative energy. It's going to cleanse actual germs from the air too. And it also doesn't offend good spirits. So that's always nice.
Right.
But you can have fun with it. Yeah. Yeah. Lavender is also really good because it's so calming. That was my go-to for my room spray at work was lavender. And cinnamon, because it reminded me to like step into my own power at work. But also cinnamon is also a cleansing oil or herb to use.
So if you maybe can't spray something at your desk, you can't burn anything, obviously. I don't know any office that allow you to burn stuff, but if you can't have a physical item there, you can do it a little more covertly by drawing sigils with your finger, or maybe if you have an oil that you have created or a spray that you've created and you can't spray it at that time, you can put a little bit on your finger and draw sigils on your desk, on your computer, on your chair, on your lunch before you stick it in the refrigerator to protect it from, that coworker that steals everybody's lunches. There's all kinds of things you can do. You can tape herbs and sigils and stuff like that to the underside of your desk or your chair. Now, don't do what a coworker of mine did. Please, please, please. This was a fiasco. So this one coworker of mine, she was infatuated with a contract employee that was working for us. And she kept begging me. She knew she was, of the same like mind and everything like this. She knew who I was and what I did. But so she kept bugging me to do a love spell between her and him. And I refused. I won't do love spells. That's not something I do. So finally, she decided that she was going to take an Adam and Eve root and tape it to the underside of his desk. He found it. It was not pretty. And in that case, she almost got fired because isn't it? Yeah. And it was just so intrusive and it was just unnecessary. So yeah, like don't do stuff like that. Like that's terrible. But for your own desk, for your own workspace, if you're the only one ever using it, you can, put a sigil on the underside of your desk or on the underside of your chair, or, just draw it with oil or with water or with tea even. Teas are excellent for this kind of work. Not only can you just drink the tea covertly, but you can also give the tea to someone that you're intending to work something with. And I'm leading into the spell that I'm going to share with you guys. So often we have those coworkers that they need to go. They're disruptive. They're not helping. They're not cooperative. They just don't do any good for the organization. So we know in our hearts and minds that they need to have the 2 weeks. They need to give a 2-week notice. But how do you do that? How do you get rid of a coworker that's really disturbing things, that's really not helping? I created a 2-week notice tea that you can use. And keep in mind, this isn't going to infringe upon their will. So those of you who are freaking out right now because I'm suggesting doing a spell on someone, stop. It's cool. I'm much more mindful than that. This is going to be a spell to encourage them to give their 2-week notice. And like Elyse and I said earlier, you can get this spell in the show notes. Just sign up for the email newsletter and you will get a copy of this spell for you to use. And it's easy. So it's a simple blend of common herbs, and you can make a tea that they either drink it, or if they refuse to drink it, or if they have an allergy to one of the herbs that is not good for them to drink, you can use it as a spray, or maybe wash their mug with it, or a pen that they like to use, or their phone. You can be a little covert and not leave anything behind that outs you. You don't want to be ousted, but it's not intrusive either. So this spell is highly functional. It's fun to just get into ways that you can be covert in the workplace and still practice and not have to sell yourself out to the man. Oh my God, I am so excited to bring this to you. This is the Rebel Mystic Method. This is an entire framework I have been working on for nearly 20 years. And what this brings to you is 5 essential areas to manifest, to help you manifest your best life. I take you through calibrating your compass, where we define your core values and set that foundation for your visions and your dreams. Then I take you through energy hygiene and mastery, where I teach you how to master your own energy you're sending out into the universe, as well as the energy coming at you from other places and other people. Then, of course, shadow work, where we learn to identify our patterns and instill those superpowers into our daily lives and honor them as we manifest our needs and desires. Then, of course, magical alliances, where I take you through my framework for connecting with deity, connecting with spirit guides, connecting with ancestors, and working with them to achieve your goals. And then finally, we put it all together in daily practices, rituals, and observances that help us solidify and manifest those things we need most in our life. I hope you're excited for this. The live workshop happens October 12th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And when you reserve your seat, you get a copy of the entire guidebook. This has pages and pages and pages of helpful information, worksheets, and the entire framework you need to get started and to manifest your best life. The links are in the show notes. I look forward to seeing you in the workshop. Blessed be.
So before we wrap this episode up, we got an awesome question from a listener that we wanted to answer here in the episode. So the listener writes, if I want to work with a goddess from Japan, should I write or speak to them in Japanese? Can we communicate clearly with any deity through any language? It'll be my first time trying to reach out to a deity, so it's fairly new to me. So I wanted to start with the short answer, which is any language is fine. I truly believe that. I think it's really heartwarming for deities when we put that extra work in. And I think especially like Greek deities, I've noticed, because that's my own experience, that there is a kind sort of respect that they have for that extra work. But when I first started writing petitions or incantations in Greek, even though I grew up speaking Greek to an extent, it wasn't in that kind of way. So I definitely made grammatical errors or spelled things wrong or, but that did not matter. It actually still strengthened my relationship because it was about the effort behind that. Now, I don't think it's necessary, though. I mean, pretty much nobody.
In my experience, it's not.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. In my experience, I think we have to think of spirit much bigger than our human confines allow us. So spirit, they're bigger than borders, languages, cultural constructs. And the limitations we put in place of connecting with deity, I think are our own. They are specific to our own limitations, like the church does. Like the church says that you can only connect through God, through your priest or your minister or whatever. I really find that spirit's bigger than that. They don't experience us that way, the way we experience other humans, if that makes sense. Like when I'm writing out petitions, I write them out in my own language because I know I can be clear. I can be concise. I can fully express what I need and what my desires are and what I'm willing to put forth to gain that. And when spirit speaks back to me, it's never, for me, it's not in words. For me, it's like just a knowing. And I think that's really how they communicate, is just a knowing. Like when you start connecting, when you make your intentions solid and clear, there's a knowing that it's just automatically transmuted or transmitted. And that's where the relationship takes place, is that clear understanding. So I don't think it's necessary, but yeah, I agree. I think it's that extra dedication, that extra show of dedication, that extra oomph you can give to the relationship, that extra show of respect. And I think it helps. I think it's, go, if that's even just an excuse for you to learn Japanese, go do it.
And same goes for land spirits. In fact, I think that's why they feel so remote and difficult for people to work with, is that they do not have names in most cases. So that doesn't mean you're not really experiencing that entity. Names are a human construct. We use names in witchcraft. We adopt magical names because they help us step into our power. That doesn't mean names aren't powerful, but they also at the same time don't determine a deity or an entity's power. They're just a name. I think the movies put way too much stock in, I said the guy's name and now look at this, it's always like some demon is summoned by accident because someone read aloud. Names aren't that important.
Merry meet,
merry part, and merry meet again.
Thank you for joining us on the Magic Kitchen podcast. Please visit my website, leandrawitchwood.com, for news, information, and more episodes.
I'm Elyse Wells, and I can be found at Seeking Numina on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, and seekingnumina.com. That's Seeking, Numina.